And we are talking about Black Panther Wakanda Forever. We are going to review the movie and then get into a spoiler breakdown for you starting now. Welcome to the Nerd Soul Show. I am Nathan.
I'm John.
And I'm Colin.
Hey, so Black Panther 2 Wakanda Forever came out today. We are going to do a review of it now. And actually, our review might be run a little bit longer because there might be people just like in the theaters right now or about to go see it right now. So we'll do a fuller spoiler-free review before we break it down. But the spoiler-free logline provided by Disney is the Wakandans strive to embrace their next chapter, fighting to protect their nation from intervening world powers in the wake of King T'Challa's death. So, John, what did you think of Wakanda Forever?
So I appear to be in the minority with my um, reaction to it. I thought it was okay. I didn't think it was great by any means. The the story I didn't mind at all. I know they had to readjust and from what their original storyline was going to be, but what we got, I was okay with. But I definitely didn't rank it as highly as some other folks have. But just to point out some things, the acting's phenomenal, the cinematography is great, the action shots and the visual effects I thought were pretty top notch as well. The introduction of some of the new characters I thought were fantastic, great additions to the MCU. Slight, my only complaints and criticism really have to do with some of the story choices. Some of them felt like to me a little shoehorned in, including we have a new character in there that yet again differs from what we see on screen versus what we kind of know of, especially for those comic book fans out there, what we see on the pages. The years as well. So, all in all, I've got to mention the soundtrack. Soundtrack again is fantastic. I didn't think it was as good as the first soundtrack, but I thought I found it pretty good all around as well. So overall, I would probably rank this movie behind the original Black Panther movie. Of course, they did have to deal with the fact that they no longer have the star from that first movie. But everybody else did a great job of stepping in, stepping up with the roles that they had. Particular actors of note, Angela Bassett was fantastic. I mean, we all know she brings her A game to a lot of the roles that she has, but she was absolutely a standout for me. Letitia Wright did great job as well, and every actor. I didn't see any actor in there that really faltered. Everyone did a great job with the role that they were given, so I had no complaints in that area. And again, overall, if I had to rank it among the Marvel movies, especially those recently, I'd have to squeeze it in between Doctor Strange: Multiverse of Madness, which I rank. I believe I gave it a 7 out of 10. Thor, I gave, I believe, a 6 out of 10. Thor: Love and Thunder. I'd have to squeeze this movie in between, probably around a 6.5 or so for this year.
Okay. Uh, so, Colin, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that John, you might be in the minority because I think when we were talking about this with Nathan, I think that I lean more towards what Nathan is going to say. But for me, I think there's a lot of layers to this movie, and I would say, and this is as a reminder to folks, this is the 30th MCU movie, so we've had third. This is number 30 out of all the movies, so it's been a while. Um, that this whole thing started back in 2008, but it's fairly well done and given the circumstances, given what has happened, and this was very highly anticipated because of the fact of what has happened to their star, and so I think that Ryan Coogler was able to balance a lot of different things and introducing new characters as well into the MCU storylines. So they were definitely like different beats in which he was able to incorporate into it. New characters, um, just some of the more social commentary stuff that's happening in the world. as well as some nuggets here and there about MCU setup. So having all those all together in a way where some of it's subtle, some of it's very good. I think that he did a fairly good job. Yeah, there was one time in which I was looking at I was like, oh, this is dragging it just a little bit, but at the same time, I was like, okay, it's still a great movie overall. For me, I think that um, it would probably be in the top 10. Probably not as strong as the first one. And this, in terms of this year, I say it's better than the other two that we've seen, Thor and also Doctor Strange. So for me, I think that it's there, and I think that it did kind of relive some of the magic that the MCU has in terms of the deep emotional beats. I think for me, definitely feeling some of the time of processing. I said on my social media that the processing was a lot to kind of go through, and I haven't felt that way actually since Infinity War. Um, for me, Infinity War was a lot to process. It was so intense. It's not as intense as Infinity War, but it's yeah, definitely a lot to kind of go over and to analyze and to kind of rethink um, about all the different type of themes that were in this story. So for me, I would say I would give it, a B plus, A minus, around 8.5, 9, around that area.
Yeah, I watched this movie twice yesterday, and I tried to be more critical of it the second time, and I think there are some issues with things that could have been cut. But overall, even watching it, like the first time was like mostly just to have it like wash over me, see how I'd feel emotionally. Second time was actually, with more critical eye, taking notes, and it's still, even the second watching, held together fairly well for me. There are some things that could have been cut, and we can talk about those specifics when we get into it. I mean, I can mention the characters that could have been cut, because these people are actually in the promotional stuff. Riri didn't have to be in this movie. Neither did what's his name, Everett Ross. Uh, those things could have been cut out of the movie. They set up other things. And what they set up, we can talk about when we break down the movie. But all in all, like you said, Colin, like given the Herculean task that Ryan Coogler had, this movie is far more coherent than I could have ever hoped for. It's not as good as the first movie, but it's very good. It's very good. It's not great. I think the first movie was great with like some third act issues, and even the third act issues is mostly because of the CGI, because it looked like a video game. It's not as great as that movie, but it's very good. There's a lot of stuff going on here. There's a whole political plot that drives the movie, and it feels like that political plot was the same plot that Ryan Coogler had when he was writing it for Chadwick Boseman. But because of the loss of Chadwick Boseman, there is also an emotional plot so the political plot drives the action. The emotional plot wraps the entire movie around, wraps the entire movie, and it also feeds into the political plot as well. So that's why I'm saying, like, it works on multiple levels, and it doesn't have any right to be as good as it is, given that he only had 6 months to rewrite this while grieving for his friend. Yeah, it's quite an achievement. I think all of us would have preferred the movie that he was originally writing. I think that probably would have been an even better movie than the first one. But given the cards that they were dealt, it came out very, very well. I think. Like I said, better than it had any right to be. Because I mean, we can get into, like I said, some of the political statements that are made, because the first movie is very political. This movie is very political for lots of reasons as well. Black Panther historically has been very political. I think we've mentioned this before in other reviews, even though we weren't around when the first Black Panther came out, but like there are certain characters that have always had some, like a political strain. I think very early on, Black Panther was like fighting the KKK in one of his earlier books. So, and as a world power within the Marvel universe, similar to like Doctor Doom, there's always some geopolitical stuff going on with Wakanda and the Black Panther. So yeah, it was exceptional. It's exceptional in parts. In other parts, like I said, could have been cut out. And I don't know if that's. It's hard to tell whether or not it's the indulgence of the director, or if it was being pushed by Marvel Studios, because the things that I think that could have been cut out are basically set up for things down the road, and they distracted from the story. So it seems like that was more like studio interference, which is weird to me because I feel like I know they're spending $200 million on this movie, and they trust it, and they have to get their investment back, but like given the awfulness that happened, he could have quit. He didn't quit. I feel like they should have left him alone. They should have just left him alone and not given him the notes to like put this thing in here and put this thing in there, because I think that made the movie not as focused as it could have been. But that being said, it's still very good. It's still very good. I mean, it's my favorite comic book movie this year. It slightly edges out the Batman, even though I don't think that, so like because of the Batman had like third act problems as well, but the third act problems was more of an issue for me with the Batman than it was with Black Panther, because Black Panther, like I said, it was just mostly just because of the CGI. The Batman should have just ended at a certain point and just kept going. So that's why it's lower for me than this movie. Whereas this movie, there are certain things that they could have cut out of the middle, but I don't think they were, of the three acts in this movie, I wouldn't have cut out an act. Whereas like the third act of Batman, there was like a 3.5 act in the Batman. So that's why it's a little bit lower. It's a bit lower for me than this movie, even though this movie, like as I said, has its flaws. So yeah, I'd probably give this an 8 or 8.5 as well. I don't think I would give it a 9, but an 8.5 is like I said, very good. Not great, but very good. So yeah. Let's see. What else do we want to talk about? We're here. I mean, we can talk about some of the characters. Like I said, I'd like to give people as much information as possible without spoiling the movie. Angela Bassett is exceptional in this movie. I think she should at least be nominated and win, because she's been around since I was a child, and she should have won several times before. And yeah, someone made a joke. Someone made a joke that I thought was pretty funny, that like she's acting in this like she's pulling out all the stops like she's in a slave movie. the joke that I heard. So like yeah, I mean, you kind of hear them. You kind of hear these the performances, like part of the performances in the trailer, but like you get the full context in the movie, and it's more effective in the movie because you know why she's saying the things that she's saying.
Oh yes.
Like I already mentioned, I mentioned Riri, and I mentioned Everett. Even though, like I said, I think that their parts could have been cut out of this movie. They both do a fine job. They're fine. I don't have any issue. My issue about Riri being in this movie is more about it distracted from the main plot of the movie. They could have written just a random person in that role, but that has nothing to do with the actor. The actor did a good job. She's great. Looking forward to her show. The stuff with they did really do some great stuff with Okoye in this movie. Her plot line is good into the second act, and in the third act they sort of forget about it because it seems like they're trying to set up something else. Again, we'll talk about that. They do stuff, really good stuff with Nakia as well. Um, she's important. You understand. You understand why she's important to the plot even more by the very end of the movie. But she also has some good stuff, very important stuff to do in the second act. And from the beginning to the end of the movie, this movie wouldn't work without Shuri. And Letitia Wright does this excellent job upgrading this character from a bouncy teenager cracking jokes to someone who is really wrestling with a lot of loss. And she's able to communicate that and going through all the grievings, like all the grieving processes, like denial and anger, and she plays all that stuff really great. So yeah, and of course, think about it. She lost her father, and then she lost her brother. Yeah. She's had a lot of loss in her life, and she's wrestling with it. And Winston Duke also is really great here. I mean, they could have used him more, but like when he shows up, it's always fun. Not always fun, because he also has some quieter moments as well, which he also acts. Winston Duke acts very well as M'Baku. So yeah, I think the entire cast here is just really strong. They really cared about this project. It seems like they really did it for Chadwick. When they're having conversations about T'Challa, it seems like some of those takes, they don't need to act. They're actually feeling real things about Chadwick. So yeah, it's a great achievement. It's a great achievement. Even though, like I said, the movie isn't excellent, it's still a great achievement given what they were given. If this wasn't interconnected with another universe, like everyone would have taken a year off or whatever, or maybe a couple years off to like regroup and like figure out how to rework the movie. But like this has to feed into a bunch of other movies, so they gave him 6 months to fix the script, and they only pushed back production 6 months, so it's crazy. So yeah. Any other thoughts, guys, before we get into the breakdown?
Just to throw some praise on the costume designer again.
Everyone
works in costuming. Everyone looks fantastic in this movie. And when you were talking to Angela Bassett, especially her.
Costume designer and also the production designer, because which I'm actually looking at a picture of because I didn't even mention Namor. Namor also is really great. I don't think that he hits I don't think he hits all the highs as Killmonger, but he's really compelling in a very different way for completely different reasons. He's I really like him, and I really want to see him again. And he's even funny at parts, whereas like the way that Eric was played, he was angry all the time. And it was he's like he has like a righteous anger that's like really compelling to watch, but you could see like the wheels turning within Namor's brain. He's very strategic, but he also very like he also has some of that like righteous anger, right, kind of like imperious. Like this is the performance from like Namor and Black Adam are very similar, and this is what I expected from The Rock. This kind of performance, and I know The Rock isn't really an actor, but this is how you could play Black Adam the way that he's playing Namor. So yeah, he does a good job, really good job. Anything else before we jump into it? Start
there's definitely some beats from some of the several characters that kind of remind me of past characters in the MCU. So, but we can get into that when we get to it in the spoiler part.
Yeah. All right. So spoilers ahead. We go see the movie. But if you saw it already and you're ready to talk about the specifics, join us in the next part. So spoilers ahead. All right, so as I said, the movie just came out, so we don't have a whole lot of screenshots. You saw some of them as that I cycled through. We really start this movie. They get it. I think the one of the reasons that I really think this is a really well structured, well written movie. And Colin, you and I were talking about this before we started. Like Ryan Coogler, co-wrote this movie as well as directing it. It's just framed very well, with Shuri being the first voice that you hear and also the last face that you see. The first movie starts with someone talking before you see them as well. In the first movie, you hear Ndjaka's father talking about Wakanda before you see anything. And so you get, it's a very he's paying attention to not just where this movie stands within the MCU, but also as it stands as a Black Panther movie, because he established some things in the first Black Panther movie that he wanted to pull through in this movie, but also had to mix in the things that the real world things that happen, like Chadwick's death. So like starting with her voice, ending with her face, starting with her voice and her panic trying to come up with some sort of solution for her brother, is how this movie begins. So they deal with this even before they roll the Marvel credits. I think it was a really strong beginning. What do you guys think?
Yeah, that's it was a great intro. They got right to it. Everybody knew kind of what to expect. They knew it was going to be a movie dealing with the aftershocks of Chadwick Boseman's death, therefore leading to somehow explaining that in this sequel. And they jumped right into it, and I liked how they did it. They got right to the point. They set the stage right away, and yes, leading right into the the typical Marvel Studios intro, which is different this time. Silent, showing pictures of Chadwick Boseman.
Yeah.
Almost every Chadwick Boseman video you can think of, right? It just interposed translucently in the Marvel Studios logo, which was great. I thought a great tribute in that way. And so they got right. They got right to. So to me, that was definitely a highlight for me, and the way they started off. They kicked it off right.
It's like one of the only times you actually see Chadwick's face. You see him again at the very end, at a very appropriate place. They worked very hard not to exploit his death for dramatic effect in this movie, and I think that they honor him without exploiting him, and in again, a very hard thing to do, and they still did it, and they did it. So like, you see his face here in the Marvel logo, and the only time they ever did that before is with Stan Lee. When Stan Lee died at the beginning of Captain America, they changed everything to all of Stan Lee's cameos.
Captain Marvel.
Sorry, Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel, not Captain America. So because that was the last time he did a cameo. And so yeah, it was a very good beginning. The funeral is right after this, and this is an image from the funeral. It's a very joyous event. Not because they're happy that he died, but like it's a celebration of his life, and also his passing on to the ancestral plane. I mean, this is very common in a lot of real life Black communities. You can think of even outside of Africa. You can think of like the marches down in New Orleans when people pass away. So it's very reminiscent of that, celebrating the person's life. This was also very effective. We saw a lot of this in the in the trailer, but it was also just to see the entire scene was really great, and you got, of course, to see Shuri in the procession here, and get a sense of where her head is at.
Yeah, it's very much her movie. I mean, this movie, I was surprised that I mean, you kind of saw the preview of it being that she was the lead in the casting role. She was the lead, and yeah, it pretty much is her movie for the whole entire movie. It's really her. She stopped carrying the weight of all of it. Yes,
she stepped up. Like this is what I'm talking about. Like there's so many things that could have broken under the weight of like expectations, and like everyone stepped up. Like she was not even the second lead in the previous movie.
Correct.
But out of necessity, I don't even think I probably on the call sheet she was maybe fourth or fifth, because I think Okoye was probably higher on the had a bigger role in the last movie than she did.
Lupita's as well, yeah.
Lupita to a certain extent, yes, but I mean, because she had the relationship with Chadwick, but yeah, she was able to carry this movie. She which is amazing. She really did the work here, to show the full emotional range of grief on the through her character. So yeah. So we had the funeral. After that, I'm looking at my notes here, because I don't have every plot point, but like there's the death, then the UN attack, the UN speech, which we've seen in the trailers as well, the UN speech, but the way that they did is they intercut it with the clip that you've seen online of someone attacking their outpost. I think that speech was very effective. I'm not sure how you guys feel about that scene, but that I think that was very effective to show sort of where they were, because they also did a time jump. Like after the funeral, it was like 1 year later, and then they were at the UN.
Right. So I think that was pretty effective, kind of like calling out hypocrisy, and that's the whole geopolitical nature that you mentioned. The non-spoiler part, I think that was probably some of the best work. I mean, you kind of saw it in Civil War, like in Civil War a little bit, but this was kind of like up a notch, where it's like calling out every countries, especially the more wealthier countries, and their hypocrisy. So it was like, okay, so don't mess with us. If you're going, you want vibranium, you can't have it. And so it was very well done in that way. And a lot of people were like, in my theater, they were like cheering. They were like, yeah, take it to them, take it to the colonizers, And it's like, so, yeah, you're like in your face a lot. Yeah.
So yeah, and it also wasn't a random choice, because I mean, you talk about the colonizers, and it's always often the United States, but I think it was a very deliberate choice to choose the French to be the aggressors here. France colonized much of Africa. France was the colonial power in Haiti, which shows up later on in this later on in this movie. So I think they chose France very deliberately. This is like I said, this is why this works on multiple. They thought this through very well. It's not like the United States isn't a threat, because this basically sets up Black Panther 3, where the U.S. is definitely going to go after. They think that they're weak. Now they put Everett Ross in. They try to put Everett Ross in jail. I don't know if it's going to setting up Black Panther 3 or it's setting up the Thunderbolts. But it's setting up some U.S. aggression against Wakanda. Yeah. So yeah.
I think it was well done overall. I think that just the kind of like the regalness of Ramonda there, and just like and the fact that she's grieving. She lost her husband, and she lost her son, and but don't mess with us because we, you think that we're weak right now, but we're not. Um, and then Okoye just showed up like in that facility. I was like, wow, like yeah. But she has several good scenes later on, but that was a
Yeah,
really
the whole way that they were staged, like they assault the facility and they ask who has access to the vault, who has with
yeah.
vibranium, and they open up the vault and the door come out. So yeah, that was a whole
Hmm.
it was
Oh
very
yeah.
very well done and intercut with the way they intercut it with the other the UN speech.
Hmm.
So yeah, she's like yeah, we know what you know what we know what you're saying. Our protector is dead, and Wakanda is vulnerable. Yeah,
Yeah.
everything in this speech is like yeah, we don't keep vibranium from you because of the potential, the its potential for harm. We keep it from we're not sharing it because of you, and we know what
Right.
what you people are capable of. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. Pretty much.
it was a good speech.
Yeah.
And that is sort of echoed later on when Namor speaks to her. It's like why like he basically has the same point of view of all the other Wakandan kings before T'Challa.
Hmm.
Don't share this with the don't share this with the white colonial world. Like why would you tell them? Like why would you ever tell them about any of this?
Right.
I can sort of see his point of view as well. Like them becoming public also puts his people at risk because
Hmm.
it.
Yes.
So yeah,
Yeah. Definitely a lot of nuance in his story as well, in Namor's story,
yeah,
and just the flashback. Oh, it's just so amazing. Just like it was just well done. And I mentioned yesterday in our chat that he's like a mirror almost to a reflection of Shuri, but also he was also like this movie's Killmonger in some ways. Like you mentioned in the non-spoiler part, he had that righteous anger, and the way in which they portrayed what was the city's name? Oh, tech. What was the city's name? I don't remember the city's name,
I
but
don't
the way
remember
that
off the
they
top of my
kind
head
of
either.
Telecom.
Yeah,
Telecon, how they
Telic.
portrayed the city was just so great. It was just
Yeah,
like really great overall. It was just like wow, that like he not only did you have to be reintroduced to Wakanda, but also you're introducing a new city, a new world, another world build that he had to do, and it's like
yeah.
you have to do that. That's just phenomenal. I just think that
Yeah,
that's
I think they
phenomenal.
could have cut more of the Martin Freeman stuff and just showed me more of his city because I wanted to
Hmm.
see more of the city there.
Hmm.
You're being very quiet, John. what what do you think?
Well, no, the telecon was great. I love those aspects of it. Just introducing, as Colin mentioned, a brand new world there. Definitely different from the Atlanteans that we see in
Yeah,
Aquaman
very deliberate
Hmm.
choice. Yeah,
and
yeah.
Justice League, right? So
Hmm.
very different in that, and the different way they swim, different the way they look, different the way their physiology,
Yeah,
all that
Yeah.
stuff. So
I've
I thought that was really good to establish that.
Yeah.
But also a very bold choice in differing very much from the comics, taking leaning right into Mayan culture,
Hmm.
incorporating that as part of his origins as well. I thought was very creative and
Hmm.
another great way to um, really lean into the diversity as well. I know there's some racists out there who hate that choice, but you know what? Screw you all.
yeah. I mean, yeah,
But I thought it was fantastic. It gave more, richness, right? And
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
into
And
feeling at
because
this character.
yeah, I think you're right. Like there are people that are gonna cry about these kind of things regardless, but I think it's a better story.
Yeah.
Yes.
I recently saw a interview with Ryan Coogler, and he says, he loves he loves Aquaman. He loves what was the movie, the Disney movie Atlantis.
The
But
Lost
like
Empire, yeah.
the Lost Empire. But he said those movies exist, and you sort of already know that. So like they decided to do something different. If they're going to be underwater, let's do something different. Let's pull from a different culture. Like Atlantis is already a made up thing, and it was very Greek focused. If you're making up things anyway, let's make another sort of political statements here. Like what?
Yes.
Wakanda exists as a empire that's untouched by colonialism, and so does this empire exists as a direct result of colonialism. So we saw in the Eternals that colonialism are in the same part of the world is what broke up the Eternals, and that why they scattered.
Yes.
And we're getting another part of this information, a little bit more of the story here. This small part of the group broke off, and they were able to create a civilization under the water, to get away from the colonialists. I think it was a brilliant choice.
So introducing this background for Namor is I don't know what came first, the origin of how they came up with his name. I thought was actually very creative as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Child without love, Namor, right?
Yeah.
And, I wonder if they started with that and then they say, hey, that let's back into this, work our way into his backstory of this, and it just seems to fit all of it. Everything you just mentioned, Nathan, just fits with the overall theme of what Coogler was trying to go for here. It fit in nicely. So again, that's why I thought the character, the world in which he built around him for Namor was very creative, and also a highlight for me in this. Real quick, just you know how I like to point out certain types of actors. So we got Richard Schiff. He's another actor where if you want to answer the trivia question of hey, who's been in both Marvel and DC movies, and he was there in the UN Council or the UN hearing.
I think he might be the new. I think he might be the new Secretary of State, actually, because there's speculation now that the reason that they didn't just let they recast the Thunderbolt Ross thing,
Thunderbolt Ross,
is because Harrison Ford is going to play the president. Like, it's not often that the Secretary of State becomes president, but it's not unheard of. The Secretary of State runs a president. That's what Hillary Clinton did.
Yeah.
So it's not implausible that he would be the president. But Thunderbolt Ross kind of hates enhanced people. So that shows up in the Thunderbolts movie, or that shows up in the next Wakanda movie, that'll be very interesting. But I think he's supposed to be the new Secretary of State. So I think he's gonna. Yeah, I think he's gonna show up again in another movie.
Yeah, I think he will, because it was a really tiny part for a guy that. I know he's he's quite the character actor. You see him in a lot of different things.
Yeah.
He played Dr. Emil Hamilton in Man of Steel.
Yep.
And in all the different roles that I've seen, he's always done a great job. And to see such a small role here, you can only think that he's going to have a bigger role later, or a recurring role in different movies and such, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We've been jumping around a little bit, but like we can keep going in, I guess, chronological order. So like after this, the UN thing, we get the attack on the CIA ship in the middle. I think it's the middle of the Atlantic or the Pacific. I think it's the Atlantic.
I think it was the middle of the Atlantic. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're using this vibranium detector, and in the UN conversation, they're expressing their frustration that they're not sharing the vibranium, and that it can't be detected by metal detectors. So this shift is kind of informed by the previous scene at the UN. They're in a mad dash to get this resource. So yeah, and then we see this Namor shows up in this scene, but he basically is just like a dark figure in the night because we think Lake Bell's character is going to get away,
Mm-hmm.
but her ship gets thrown into the ocean by Namor.
Yeah,
But yeah,
another small part for Lake Bell as well, and she's
Yep.
the voice of Poison Ivy on the animated show. So
she's the
part
voice
that.
of Poison Ivy in the animated show, but she is also the voice of Black Widow in the What
Black
If
Widow.
show.
Yep. And
Yeah,
what if?
yeah,
Yep.
On
Mhm.
What If? That's right.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be a bigger part for her. I like Lake Bell.
I do too.
I it'd been nice for her to stay a little bit longer. I guess they could do some flashbacks with her in the Thunderbolts movie, so she could show up again later on. But she's
Mm-hmm.
looked like she's dead here. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Although didn't see the body, so but uh, but I think that the intention there is that she's dead.
Yeah.
That being said, we also see that Everett isn't being told everything, right, by his ex-wife. So
Valentina.
yeah,
that was a trip. That was such a trip.
yeah,
I was just like, wow. They just kind of weed that in there. Yeah, he just kind of like I said, it's very subtle. It's like, yeah, you're my ex-wife. It's like, really? Like,
yeah,
huh?
yeah,
Like she's
yeah.
been appearing. This is I think what was her? This is her third appearance. I think she was in Falcon Winter Soldier. She was in Black Widow. So I think this is number 3. Is it? I'm pretty
This
sure.
is
It's number
this is her
3.
third appearance. Yeah, this is her third
Yeah,
appearance.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it's good. The stuff with him, like I said, could have been cut out, but I thought it was funny. It was mostly set up. It's set up for something else, but this is why
Right.
it could have been cut. It could have been cut out. It's set up for the Thunderbolts. Um, so it didn't need to be in this movie. I think his parts were the only, I guess, funny parts of this movie, except for
Right.
some of the interactions with Riri in Boston. Those
Yep.
those
Mhm.
those were a little bit humorous, so maybe that's why they kept it in. But like,
Yeah.
it wasn't essential to the movie.
No, it
No,
wasn't.
I
felt
think
like-
also M'Baku had a couple of humorous moments. I think that this is why I say that it was brilliant in that you're able to kind of balance all these different things, and also you adding the typical Marvel humor / quips that are happening, with the characters, and it's just like it felt it didn't feel out of place. It felt like it kind of felt organic and appropriate in the moment. And I thought that was brilliant because it's like this is supposed to be a very like highly emotionally charged movie and geopolitical movie, and then you still were able to kind of sprinkle in all these, and also the world building, like I mentioned before. You're just sprinkling this in here and there. Could have been cut out. I think yes, to kind of but
Yeah,
I think
if there's like, I mean, it's the movie's 2 hours and 40 minutes. If there's like fat to trim, those are the things that trim. But like you said, when you watch it, it's not like terrible or anything, and it does
Right.
add some levity to the
Right, exactly.
to the
Yeah,
to the
I
movie.
thought they definitely could have cut it out. I didn't think it really went anywhere. And
No, it's not,
because
and I don't think it's
so
meant to go
much-
anywhere. It's meant to set up other things, which
Yeah,
which is
so
why
it
it could have been
was-
cut out.
Yeah, and just like if we were to look back on Iron Man 2, the way they included some shots of, Director Fury and Black Widow, it was just like all shoehorned in there. I felt
Yeah.
like his parts were really shoehorned in there.
Yeah, I heard a similar complaint that this is very a phase 1 mistake to make, shoehorning things in here that weren't necessary to this story.
Correct.
It pulled attention from this story.
Yep.
So yeah. Which is why, like I said, this movie is very good, but not excellent. I think if it was cut a little bit, it could have gotten to excellent. And of course, if the main actor didn't die, it would have been exceptionally excellent because they wouldn't have had to deal with any of this stuff. I don't know. Maybe they would have tried to shoehorn even more stuff in, because I feel like
I don't know.
shoehorning Riri in there has really nothing to do with Chadwick's death. I feel like
Yeah.
that's either Ryan's decision because he's one of the executive producers on Riri's show, or it was Kevin Kevin's decision because he wanted to set up Riri's show, but like
You're talking about Kevin, the artificial intelligence Kevin?
P-I-N.
yeah.
Are you talking about him, or are you talking about
yeah.
Kevin, the other Kevin?
Yeah, I don't know. Whoever's making the decision, it didn't seem a decision. It didn't seem a decision that was dictated by the necessities of this script. It was a decision that was dictated by the necessities of the larger universe, and which pulled focus from this script. Because it just could have been any scientist. If you wanted to make a MacGuffin girl, it could have been any MacGuffin girl. It didn't have to be her, or they could have just made the conflict, made another decision to get Namor conflicted with the Atlanteans. Like, he could have just been annoyed with them because they decided to go public, because deciding to go public puts him at risk. They could have cut the whole Riri stuff out. But like, I liked her action scenes. I like I said, I like the actress, but it wasn't necessary for the movie.
Yeah.
So
that's one of my gripes about the movie, is that I felt like the cast was just too big. I mean, I may be alone in this, but I just felt like there was way too many characters in this movie, and I just thought it took away a little bit from some. Right.
So I guess the other person that they could have cut out was Aneka, Michaela Coel. But again, I feel like that was setting up whatever Disney Plus movie that they're going to do with the.
You keep showing her. What are you going to do with her? It's like another setup. It's clearly
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't organic. It was. Let's just say it wasn't organic. It's not like Ao's appearances.
No, but
they were actually like organic in that way. Whereas like here, like you're definitely shoehorning Riri Williams. You're definitely shoehorning Michaela Cole's character. So it's like it's kind of, you're definitely setting stuff up. But then at the same time, Ao was such a great character. We saw her in Civil War, briefly, and then we saw her in Black Panther. Then we saw her in Falcon Winter Soldier. So it was like, it made kind of sense in some ways. Whereas like like I said, organic. Whereas this is like it's like obvious setup.
Yeah. So again, it's just
those three characters. Yes. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying. It just felt like to me that's just yet another example of extraneous, too much. Trim the fat.
Yeah. Those three characters, it seems like there was a directive for where they needed to be at the end of the movie, and they worked backwards from that, and they shoehorned them in to a otherwise very streamlined script. Like they needed Everett Ross to be in a particular place at the end of the movie, like basically on the outs against his government. They needed Riri to have this interaction with the Wakandans to push her knowledge and her progression forward, and they needed Aneka. They needed to show that Aneka was in a relationship with Ao. They needed Okoye to lose her spot, because now Ao is the general. You saw. I'm not sure if you noticed that at the end, like Ao is wearing. You can see Ao right here in this shot. And actually, Okoye is there as well. At the end, Ao was wearing the gold on her shoulder, so she's the general now. So they needed to set them up for like the Midnight Angels movie, but it wasn't done organically. And again, I don't know if that is a problem that was in the original script, or that was a problem that was added because of Chadwick's death. But it seems like might have been a problem that was in the original script. I don't know. Who knows? Yeah. But like those are the things that could have been cut out. I mean, not all of it. Like, I think the stuff that happened with Okoye was very effective, and the speech that because without the stuff that happened with Okoye, we wouldn't have got Angela Bassett's speech about
her dressing her down. Holy moly!
Yeah,
that was painful.
Yeah.
That was very, very painful. I heard in this movie
definitely pointing out the callback to the first movie, right, of her actions or inaction when Killmonger took over. I thought it's a great callback. Like
she makes some great good points. Yeah, she makes some very. It's like I had to go begging to the Jabari tribe everyone in this room turned against me. Like, and the guy, the border tribe guy is like, well, she took up arms against her husband. And the point is like, yeah, and she can go visit her husband. My husband's dead. My son's
That
dead.
was very Game of Thrones. That was very. And then it's funny because like in the movie theater, I heard someone say they did her dirty. I was like, yeah, they kind of did. But then at the same time, I'm like, yeah.
Nah, I think she makes some really good. I think she makes some really good.
Yeah.
She makes some really good points. Like
Yeah,
she does, at this point, she doesn't even know if her daughter's alive or dead. Yeah,
Exactly.
at this point, she doesn't know if her daughter's alive or dead, and so like you can understand her fury. Like.
But this was after that brilliant action scene though on the bridge. You know, I was like that was pretty good. I would say.
I like how it was. I like how it was written, and I like how it was directed because like you see her like giving this report, and like everyone's silent, but like everyone's sort of thinking the same thing. Like you failed on a mass. Like you lost the princess of this.
Mm-hmm.
Like everyone, no one says anything, and then you like I think even though she's the one who strips her, like everyone's sort of thinking the same thing. This is a massive failure. So
just leading up to that, you know, just where we get the introduction to Riri, and it clearly callbacks to Tony Stark with his Mark 1 armor and all that stuff. With her also version of a Mark 1 armor, you know, while it was cool to see, I just felt like I have to admit, I have to say, I've seen this before, right? It's almost like they're retreading the same scenes here that we went through with Tony Stark. So in that respect, it felt like not only repetitive but unfair to the Riri character to kind of, granted she has her own suit of armor as well that she makes. It's like. Can we get something different here in the way she tests this armor? Or
I mean, I don't think she. I don't think this is the first time she tests it. I do think there are certain things that differentiate it. Like Tony is just testing the armor, and he's like a billionaire with like unlimited resources, and this is something that she put together with like she basically put this together the way that Peter would have put something like this together if he was as smart as she was, like with like scraps and things. Like she doesn't have a full body like respirator suit. That's why she gets in trouble. She doesn't get in trouble because of the frost issue that Tony had. She gets in trouble because she doesn't have a full respirator suit because she's never flown that high, because she was never, the suit that she built was never intended to fly that high, but she had to go and do something specific to take out that drone.
Right.
So the beats are a little bit different.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, definitely the beats are a little bit different, but also you're right, very similar to Peter Parker's, introduction, like I mentioned, like in Civil War. So I thought that the interaction was pretty cool. In the dorm, definitely some really humorous moments there, and I think that it's I agree with the both of you in that could we had not been introduced to her this movie? Sure, I think so. I think that it was kind of a weird choice to have her in there, but you can't. I think that it did provide some levity to it, like you said, Nathan, where you're trying to get that type of fish out of the water. What's going on? Oh my gosh, you're Wakandan. It made me nostalgic about the Peter Tony relationship in some ways.
No, it wasn't terrible. It was just superfluous. So it wasn't terrible.
I felt like it was retread. That's the reaction I started getting was like, okay, I've seen this before, and I saw another. I've seen this before too. Oh yeah, I've seen this. So and you'll hear me point that out a few more times as we talk, because I felt like it was. Is it really calling back? Is it retreading, grounds that we've already covered? And it's kind of like the criticism of The Force Awakens, right? Some of the story beats were very similar to A New Hope, and that was a knock against it. And
I mean, I feel like the entire movie was a retread of The New Hope. I understand what you're saying, but like there's like I don't think you can do a one comparison because like the New Hope, like the Force Awakens.
I can.
Was no. I'm saying like the Force Awakens was like basically a knockoff of the New Hope, basically.
Yeah.
Whereas there are elements in this movie that we've seen in other MCU movies.
Correct.
But this still has a core movie that is different than everything. Like everything with Namor's people, all the geopolitical stuff. Like I said, all the stuff that I wouldn't cut out is all new to this movie.
Yeah.
But you can also say though, John, you can also say that Ryan Coogler did repeat some of the beats from the first movie. I mean, there's some. I mean, the world building, the righteous anger of the villain. You know, there are some things that he did kind of repeat himself in some ways. Now, more effectively than say someone like Taika did. You know, like Taika did with 3 and 4. I mean, not 3. Yeah, 3 and 4.
With four. Like I think the difference between Taika and Ryan here is that Ryan is expanding on some of the thesis statements that he laid down in the original movie when he's doing the political stuff, whereas Taika is just telling the same joke in a different way that he did in the third movie, which is why it's not as effective or as serious. Like he's just telling some of the same jokes again.
The movie, right?
Huh?
Whereas Coogler has more of the themes that he fleshes out.
Yeah.
And Taika's got he's got the jokes first, and he's fleshing it out. And then you look someone like Michael Bay, he's got the action scenes and fleshes everything out around it. Yeah. So you can definitely see how they construct their story.
How they write. Yeah, how they write. Yeah, they like Ryan is trying to say something. Taika is trying to make you laugh, and then building stuff around, and then building emotional moments around the laughs. Which works. I mean, it worked. I think it worked in the first movie. It did not work as well in the second movie. The issues with this movie aren't the issues with that. The way that Ryan Coogler writes, I think, served this movie very well, because there's a lot of nuance to a lot of things that came, all the political and the geopolitical things that came up in the first movie, and you can't really get into that nuance in an action movie, but you can continue to talk about it if you have a sequel, or in another sequel. And I think that's what I'm saying. He's deepening the conversation. It's just not Africans that were affected by colonialism. So yeah, he's deepening the conversation. So
yeah,
good. It's good stuff. So I think we jumping around again here, but like Ramonda, we get the Riri thing. We get Okoye losing her title, in this scene, and then we get Ross on the bridge. He notices the Okoye beads, and I think that's when Ramonda contacts him, and he thinks that he's talking to her surreptitiously. Later on, we find out that she bugged the thing all along, and she was listening to all. So like I guess they could have intervened at any time. They just let him continue to hang himself further, because like he talked to them a lot. It like gave them a lot of information, and apparently she's been following him for a while, right? Because there's the only way that the FBI would have known that the Wakandans were going to get Riri was if they were following Ross and saw the conversation that he had with Okoye and Shuri. That's the only way that they would have shown up there, because they obviously stole her work without telling her. Like they stole it off of her university server or whatever. So it's not like, and they were obviously just watching her. So like they set him up very, very well. I don't know where he lands after this. Well, I guess we can do there'll be lots of speculation videos, and maybe we'll do one of them about all the movies that this is setting up. All the movies that this is setting up that kind of weakens this movie because it's setting up so many other movies, but I guess it does set up a lot of different things. we can
Yeah,
speculate about.
just to mention a little bit about the bridge, since I live in Boston,
Yeah.
that's an actual bridge in Boston.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
and right across from MIT. So the bridge that connects Boston to Cambridge, where MIT is at. So they were shooting in Boston on location about a year ago. So I did mention about it to Nathan. I said, yeah,
Yeah.
wow, they're doing it really in Boston. That's interesting. So yeah, they were there, but definitely in the dead of night and away from everybody from
That was
seeing
that
it.
was
So
that was a really good action scene. Like, and also
yeah,
it's really creative to show like how this society developed over the hundreds of years. Like they use the resources that they have. They're in the water all the time, so they wouldn't have the bombs that they have are basically water bombs, and water can be very very destructive.
mm-hmm.
So yeah, they blew up her ship, her the car and the and Shuri's bike. Both of them would have, well, Shuri would have died without the shield from the Okoye beads. In the fight, in the fight with the Koyo, they really give, even though she lost that fight,
Mm-hmm.
similar to the way that they did a very similar thing with Black Widow on a bridge, but I think this fight is much better than the Black Widow on the bridge fight
Yes,
from
I agree.
from the Black Widow movie.
Yeah,
Even though like the end is basically the same, they both lose and are basically pushed into the water. This is a much better fight.
yeah,
So
yeah.
Marvel seems to really love MIT, right? So MIT's shown up multiple times across multiple Marvel
Well,
movies.
when you say Marvel,
Yeah.
you're talking about the studio, or you're talking about the comic book? Because like in the comic book, they both like Tony and she do go to MIT.
I mean all of the above, right?
Yeah.
So
Okay. Yeah.
you
Also, No Way Home. We talked about No Way Home. No Way Home. We talked about there was a big plot
No Way
point with
Home.
Yeah,
MJ
that
and
was
Ed. Yeah,
that was sort of unnecessary because like in the
yeah,
movie in the comic books that is not where Peter goes
Yep.
to university, but
Empire State.
I guess they don't want to like create they want to the MCU to be closer to our world than Marvel. Like Marvel tech usually doesn't like create countries in cities except for like
Yep.
Wakanda and Latveria where Doom is. But like even like even though like Peter goes to Empire State, like
Yep.
Matt goes to Columbia University. That's where he got his
hmm
law degree. They try to like create real world places for the
Yeah.
most part, or
Oh, also
use
another
real
thing.
world places for the most part. Sorry,
Also
go ahead.
another thing in terms of DC and Marvel. So does Anderson Cooper? He's in both universes. What's going on
Oh,
there?
yeah.
across
I mean, you have the
across
Superman hat, so I mean, he was in Batman v Superman, so
across the multiverse, Anderson Cooper
Yeah.
exists on CNN. On CNN.
One man to unite them all.
I
Yeah,
know.
yeah. Um, where were we? So like the Boston, then Okoye is stripped, and I think after that, once Okoye is stripped, she goes to. Oh, this is when she talks to Everett, right? She talks to Everett to get some information from him, and then she tracks her earrings. They set that up earlier on in the episode. I keep saying episode because we mostly review episodes. Earlier on in the movie, they established that her earrings are also not as they appear. They're tracking devices because
Yeah.
she when they do the ceremony, when Namor interrupts their ceremony, she takes the Koyo beads, but she also takes her earrings as well, so she doesn't have any technology at all. In the ritual that I guess we sort of like skipped over. No, we talked about it a little bit. The Namor visit when he said, why would you let them know what you have here? The skies are clear. The water is the clearest that I've ever seen before. Yeah, and this is where he mentions the scientist, and he wants them to find the scientist, since you have the resources and also you're the one who exposed vibranium to the world. So yeah, that was a very interesting introduction to him. And you mentioned, I think, Colin, that M'Baku is somewhat the comic relief. After that is when we get to the throne room, and M'Baku comes with a carrot,
Right.
and, and he calls Okoye a bald headed demon.
Oh gosh, yeah,
The whole theater went cackling at that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Definitely,
Um,
definitely some emotional beats. But I think that also there was one there was a nice scene later on where where he was with where Shuri basically scooted all the council members out, and then she had a moment with M'Baku, and basically that really I mean M'Baku kind of reminds me a lot of Rocket Raccoon in a lot of ways, where he's kind of like this he can be very humorous at times, but he can have some levity in terms of the poignancy of a character. So it really that scene really reminded me of, he's the least expected person to have Shuri kind of open up in terms of her grief. And it was very similar to the Infinity War scene with Thor, where he was kind of opening up to Rocket and saying, I just lost my sister, my mother, my father, my brother. And it's
yeah.
like, and Rocky was kind of beside him, so I don't know what else I could do to I just have to be there. And M'Baku's kind of in the same, in kind of a similar way.
Yeah,
It's he's trying to do it, but he's but they don't really like each other either. So it's kind of very, very strange in that way.
I don't know. I feel like M'Baku's a bit more sincere than Rocket. I think Rocket is a bit more guarded. I think what they do share is that the boisterousness, they have big personalities, and
Yeah.
but I think that there is definitely a softer side to him, and you saw that even in the first movie. Like he had some quiet scenes with Chadwick as well. When Chadwick, there's a very similar scene in this movie that it was in the first movie, where Chadwick asked to speak to Lord M'Baku alone, and Lord M'Baku just explained his point of views. Like, I can't give any Jabari lives to your cause. And it was very, very contemplative, very, very quiet. And he does something very similar in this movie, when he's trying to give her counsel, but also when he's trying to give her counsel in a couple of different places, and also when he asks for her counsel as well. So he has the boisterous side, but he also has the quieter, take take the position of ruler of his people, or leader of his people very serious part as well. And I think the reason that he's not as guarded is because I think he has a real family, and he also takes the responsibility of leadership really very seriously as well. So yeah, he's a good character. It's like I would like to see more of him, and apparently by the end of this movie, he's going to be king, because Shuri doesn't seem to be very
Yeah.
very interested in ruling right now.
Give him his own movie or TV show. I would like
Yeah.
to see more of him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um. So I think she talks to Everett, then she enlists Nakia. She goes to Haiti
Mm-hmm.
to get Nakia. So that's when Nakia doesn't show up until the second act. And she's been in Haiti, and then we don't find out until the very end of the movie why she's in Haiti. But it's kind of,
Mm-hmm.
but the information that we get is that she's kind of been doing the thing that she was doing at the beginning of the Black Panther movie. She was in Nigeria then, trying to help people. Right? She has this school, and she has these techniques that she's bringing from Wakanda, for education, but also like teaching the kids like things like botany and stuff like that. So yeah, she enlists Nakia to find her daughter, and then we get the scenes with in um I forget what Namor's place is called. You said Tulkan,
Uh,
John?
Tel-
Talokan.
Talokan.
Talokan. We get the scenes with in Telecon, and I think all that stuff is done very well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Like I said, I think that Riri stuff could have been written out, but like I don't know. I'd have to spend some time thinking about how we get Shuri there, because I think it was a really good writing to connect the main villain with our main protagonist. We see them meet.
Yes.
We see them meet, of course, on the beach when he interrupts their very private ceremony. But they have a lot longer time to actually talk to each other and understand each other in his kingdom, to understand his point of view, understand what he's trying to protect, understand why he's trying, what they created, and why it's so beautiful, and why he's so fiercely trying to protect it. All that stuff was really great in the middle of the movie. So yeah.
Yeah. She also, going back to Nakia, she did her best Maribel Madrigal impression. It was pretty awesome. I would have to say that she was just stunning in this movie, but that was pretty awesome, I would have to say, with her disguise.
Yeah, they also like
her Spanish was pretty damn good too.
Like, she's not, because I think she was born in Mexico, was it? I think
yeah. She
can speak it natively. Okay.
Yes.
Lupita Nyong'o can, like, her parents were diplomats, so they were posted in Mexico. Her parents, Kenyan parents, were posted in Mexico. I don't know if she was born there, but she grew up there for a while. I think she has Mexican. She has a Mexican.
I was about to say how her
passport.
She did some great practice there, but you're holy crap. That's I could definitely hear the fluency. You know.
That's why you got to look at our birthday posts.
I guess I missed that part.
Yeah.
I totally missed that part.
Yeah. She definitely speaks Spanish fluently, because she learned it as a child. And yeah, she does it. I mean, and it serves the plot of this movie well, because she's supposed to be a spy, so she's supposed to be able to know multiple languages. I mean, in the first one, she's speaking Korean, but and I think she got panned a little bit for her Korean. Although I think that when we were talking about this, people said that her Korean was better than the woman in the scene. Because the woman in the scene,
I can attest to that.
But like this,
like, what the hell did that other lady say?
But yeah, she's a spy, so she uses her training here to get some information.
Yeah. And that was so intentional, though. I was like dying. I was like, in the movie, they were like, that's so intentional, Disney. You did it again, and then they did the going back to Riri, and they did the listing of the Disney properties when she was in the
everything that she listed. Like, everything that she listed is owned by
a little bit too on the nose.
Every single thing that she listed was owned by Disney. Indiana Jones, everything that she listed was owned by Disney. Product placement.
When offering the clothing to Shuri.
Yeah,
you should do with that.
Yeah.
It's funny.
I think this is she gets the information, and this is the scene where she actually goes in and infiltrates the cave. At the same time as, like, Angela Bassett's character is distracting Namor. This is she's on this beach distracting Namor. I forget what did she actually say to him when she has the conversation with him. She says something to him. I forget what she asks for her she threatens him. Like, she says that I think when they have this conversation, he says that you have nothing, that you can't, you don't have anything against me. And he said, yeah, and she says, I can tell the world about you, and then that's when he threatens her. He says, if you say anything about me, I will kill you. She
threatens him, and he didn't want to take any alternatives.
Yeah. He's very unreasonable in this movie, but, like, that's how he is in the comics as well. He's very single-minded, like, because I feel like the whole conversation that he had. Go ahead.
Wasn't he more asshole in the comics, though?
He's more of a he's even more of an asshole in the comics. Yes, you try.
So, right? So
he's more of it.
But I mean, this leans in the right direction. Don't get me wrong. I just felt
yeah. It's
he's more of a jerk.
he could be he's definitely more of a jerk in the comics.
I think so. Okay.
He's more of a jerk, but he's still a jerk in this movie. He's still a jerk in this
Oh
movie.
yeah, he definitely is.
I
mean, he had that whole scene with Shuri where he was like very menacing and stuff like that. And he's like, "Or you can wear a suit." I'm like, "Whoa, that's so dark." Yeah. It was that was so dark. He was like so dark, and then he's like, "Yeah, or you can wear a suit." Like,
so when he was telling that story,
that was actually pretty funny. It's like,
me of?
Yeah,
Luis.
Huh?
I say when he was telling that whole story, he reminded me of Luis, right? Just that funny bit when he's like, "Or you can wear a suit."
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we talked about the so we before seeing the city, we also got the flashbacks to his origin story as well. And that was also very, very well told. Also, it seems like the plant that was affected by vibranium had very different effects on his people. Because I guess the plant is like a plant that was grown underwater in the first place, so that's why it had the effect that it had, and it glowed blue instead of purple. So it's interesting. It seems like all of their people have super strength because they I don't know. So like they're not blue underwater though. It's like it seems like a reaction.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought too. But yeah. Honestly about that, I think that they differentiate themselves just a little bit. That it wasn't like played as a joke to like Avatar. But I mean, again, Avatar is a Disney property now, so it's like it's all honestly, interrelated anyway. So
yeah, and I got the Avatar sequel trailer right before the movie too, so
yeah,
it was fresh on everybody's mind.
Yeah, I mean they're a little bit different. Like I said, they're not blue when they're underwater. It seems like when it's a reaction that they have to their body have when they're out of water. Also, I watched this movie, like I said, twice yesterday. First in IMAX and then second time in 3D. And the only thing in the entire movie that actually required 3D was the Avatar trailer that they had at the beginning of the movie. The movie itself didn't really require 3D because no one really knows how to use 3D properly except for James Cameron, like in an effective way.
Yeah, because it's all done post production.
Yeah. Like I think he thinks out shots as he's shooting, that he's going to make 3D. Yeah. But anyway, I think they differentiated enough that they don't look like Avatar characters.
Right.
Right. Especially given all the culturally specific Mayan stuff that they have in here. So yeah. So yeah, she does this distraction, and this is when Nakia goes in and kills two people. Like and Shuri is like, we have to save her. She's like, yeah, there's no saving her. I shot her with like a sonic blast.
Yeah.
I think that she went into this situation like she didn't go in with a whole extraction team. She went in as a spy, basically like James Bond, and she had the intel that she had the intel from Okoye's interaction with these people. So she was going to come in with like the strongest weapon that they have in their arsenal, like to reduce the possibility of failure. So I don't think that she could have saved her, but yeah, that kicked off the attack later on, which happens right after that. Which we see the throne room here.
I mean, that picture you had on the beach. I mean, that was when that was happening. So it was simultaneous. So in Namor's mind, he's like, you
distracted me.
You distracted me. You bad people. You know,
and killed one of my children. I mean, at this point, he thinks all these people are his children because he's been alive for hundreds of years and they live and die because they don't have the same lifespan as he does.
Because he's a mutant.
Yeah,
which they kind of subtly put in there.
Yeah,
subtle.
No. He says I'm a mutant. He says I'm a mutant with my, like that. That's why I looked at
ears. I got the wings.
Yeah.
kind of like put it in there.
He's also met Wenwu, and he's also met the Eternals, right?
Yeah.
Who knows? Who knows? Yeah. Like I feel like he's very big on keeping his world secret. But yeah, the attack scene also very effective. I mean, what did you guys think about the attack scene of Wakanda? When it's sort of pulled from the comics. Namor does flood the capital city of Wakanda in the comics. He doesn't do as big of a flooding here, but he does flood the throne room here. They do flood a lot of like the city that's very close to the water. Seems like a lot of people die, and they use they use that siren song thing to get some of their workers to like walk to their deaths. Like some of their, it seemed like they weren't workers. Actually, I think that they were pilots. Like they were about to get into those ships, and instead of getting into the ships, they walked straight
up. I was like, minions, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. As soon as they're about to get into the ships, and instead of getting into the ships, they walk straight to their death. That's a very effective power. Like they again, definitely. another thing that was kind of thought out, like
sirens,
Western centric world, like attribute everything to the West, and they kind of claimed it for this Mesoamerican culture. Like the stories about the sirens weren't a Greek thing. It was a thing from this Mayan culture in the MCU and in the MCU anyway.
And also it also tells you the brutality of war. It's just like, I think that's one of the things that they addressed here. You know, yes, it's not as like R-rated or like blood and guts and gore, but there's consequences to this. There are consequences to these things that happen, and you know, it was very real world centric in terms of that, like how like these tiny decisions here and there have big consequences in terms of war. And you know, we go back to also Namor's advisors being very kind of like war hawks about like the surface people, and he also is very adamant about surface people, but you know, his generals are just like, you know, just go after them, you know, go after them.
Atuma and Namora, they definitely want to go after them, and they flood the city, and he himself floods the throne room. Like he obviously blames Queen Ramonda for the death of that girl. Not just the death of that girl. I think Nakia kills two people. Because he knows that he was brought out for a distraction. So he makes it a point to kill her. He killed her on purpose. And he's like, in his speech, he's like, she brought this on herself. Bury your dead. You're the queen now. Yeah.
That
was menacing. That was really menacing.
It's a really high body count in this movie, and I mean, I have to admit that kind of, you know, puts me in a different way, just knowing that it's such a high body count. I felt like Ramonda's death, I didn't like the way they did it. I didn't think it was necessary. I thought it was one death too many among the, I guess, the main characters. And
who else died in the main characters?
You're already dealing with Black Panther.
Yes, but like right? they dealt with that at the beginning of the movie. I feel like.
Well, I felt like they kept dealing with it with the rest of the whole movie, and then you have the Queen's death, and I felt like they kind of just glossed right over it, especially as we get to the end scene. We talk about that a little bit, but I just felt like, yes, this is a movie death, and then you have a real death that they're incorporating into the movie that they're dealing with, and yes, they're paying homage to Chadwick Boseman in this, but at the same time, here you have another death that you're going to have to shed some light on in the movie in the context of the story, and I just kind of felt like this was one death too many. It just kind of muddled it.
Yeah, I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can convince you on this, but let me like run down why I think this is you brilliant.
I think it was brilliant too, to be honest with you. Yeah. Go ahead, Nathan. Go ahead. You can explain it. I can explain later after you explain.
So Ramonda makes a speech earlier on in the movie about how I have lost everything when she thought Shuri was dead, and we find out that it's Shuri who's lost everything now. All of her family members are dead. Like the righteous anger that she has from the third act on is because of her mother's death. Right? She I'm gonna kill Namor. I don't care about burning down the world, and it kind of loops back to the conversation that she has with her mother in the first act about if I burn this, I really want to just burn the world. It's mentioned by Namor when later on when he's like let's attack the surface world. So like it's very consistent with the story that we're telling, where we start and we end with Shuri, and Shuri is the one person who is not processing her grief because she doesn't really believe, like all the other tools that everyone else has to process their grief, their faith in Bast, they're leaning on that to process their grief. Whereas she's a very scientifically minded person. She blames herself for not being able to save her brother. She's been in denial. That's why her mother brought her out to that ritual in the first place. And like she says, the last person that she knew that really truly knew her has died. I think this allows you to see, not in the order that they say in the textbooks that you have for grief, several of the phases of grief. And really, the order that they have in the textbook isn't the order that everyone has, because some people have anger, and then they have denial, and then they have anger again. So the fact that it's out of order is irrelevant. They actually show the phases of grief. Her anger, I'm sure she had anger right after T'Challa's death, but they skipped a year ahead, and because they have to tell a larger story, the political story, but they don't gloss over the anger. They put the anger right in the middle of the story by killing Ramonda. And honestly, I didn't cry at the beginning of the movie. I mean, it affected me. I cried when Ramonda died because I think it was put there to have you feel it, like Shuri would feel it. So I think it was really effective. It was a good choice. It was in
the movie theater. Definitely one person we heard like bawled her eyes out. It was one person just bawled her eyes out, just like when Ramonda died. It was I felt I feel what you're saying, John. It's like one death too many, but I think it pushes Shuri's character to like what Namor said, like, you're going to be queen now. Like, it just pushes her to the edge of whether or not you're going to burn the world down, or are you going to join me, burn the world down, or are you going to be like your brother and like have this kind of more redemptive arc. And also it set up brilliantly, I think, the appearance of Killmonger in the ancestral plane. Yeah. I think that brilliantly set it up, because that it's like, oh, well, in my mind, like, she's rageful, she's all about vengeance, and she felt like, what the hell, like, why isn't my father, my mother, my brother's not showing up, but him? Why is it him that's showing up? And it's like, and then he was able to kind of like, and like I talked about earlier, it was like, this is a reflection of who she is.
Yeah, she called him. That's who.
And Killmonger.
Yeah, that's who she wanted to show up, because like she was feeling she was feeling rageful. I can't speak to why it didn't work on you, but like I think the point of that was for you to be just as angry as she was. So you sort of feel why she's angry, why she's justifiably angry, because there's no way to get her there without killing her mother, because she's very reasonable with Namor when she meets him, when she's with him. Like, she doesn't become like a rage-filled, I'm gonna kill you person
So
without
that's
the death of her mother.
Yeah, so that's the plot point that I wrote down as in big bold letters. That kind of pissed me off a little bit. It was like another freaking revenge story in a superhero movie. And it wasn't leading that way, and then that's what it kind of turned into in the last part of the movie. Was by killing the mother, you got her to the point where it's now a revenge story, a revenge arc. Her coming to grips with it. Is she going to choose to be that way? Is she going to choose to try to fill that hole? You got 3 different characters trying to approach her and telling her it's wrong, that she shouldn't pursue it that way. Like, again,
I don't.
that was my reaction. Was like,
I understand what you're saying, but I don't think anything that happened unnaturally. Unlike the stuff that we were talking about that was shoehorned in. This is very naturally people acting the way that you expect them to act based upon what was the choices put in front of them. Ramonda's child is stolen from her perspective, even though Shuri gives herself up to prevent Okoye from dying. She uses every means necessary to retrieve her child, including using a spy, and spies kill people. So, but like she kills 2 of his subjects, which makes him very mad, and makes him very mad specifically at Ramonda. So Ramonda dies. Like, there are things that happen right after one another that make sense to the plot. It wasn't like, it didn't like come out of left field to like one thing happened after the other.
And you're also not going to get Killmonger and like what he's saying about the hypocrisy of the throne and all that, and all of that, which was very well done, I would say. Like that was that was really
he is not chilled. He is not chilled at all in death. It's like, it's like, I was right. I would have been a good king. Like your father was a coward. He would have killed Riri. Like, don't take away your mother's, or as he said in the first movie, auntie's heroic death. She died to save that girl. So like his whole monologue was was very good. And it also, again, makes sense that he says, he repeats what Namor said. Don't ask what, ask why. Like, and the reason why is because she was feeling rage, and that's who she pulled up, because she was feeling rage. That's who matched her rage, basically, in the afterlife, because he still had his rage in the afterlife.
I mean that's why it was brilliant in that those 3 characters is like a triangle where Shuri's kind of like a reflection of Killmonger and Namor, and also the thing is that, just like you said, some of it's very righteous and justifiable anger, but then you see that over the edge type of thing, like what Killmonger had in the first movie, and then you see the same thing with Namor. It's like, the over the edge, like the name Namor, no love, like you mentioned, John, and then the whole idea of him like taking that type of warmongering, and then his people also, like his generals, taking that type of warmongering feeling towards the surface world. I think that was just a really great kind of dynamic, between those 3. I just found that really cool overall.
I think all the scenes when it's like 2 people just talking to each other are just written really well. There were so many things between her and Namor before he kills her mother that were just really good. Like the conversation that he has with her in the cave, the conversation that he has when with her in the city. There's several aspects of that part to the one in the cave where he's painting. Like she talks to him about like not why was I giving these gifts and I wasn't able to save my brother. So like the anger that she's feeling at the end of the movie isn't just about her mother. It's also wrapped up in the anger that she has been feeling and sort of repressing about not being able to save her brother as well. She's lost everything.
Right.
So yeah.
And it makes the last scene, the fight scene between them 2, very intense.
It was brutal.
It was very intense.
This fight scene was much better than the Killmonger whatchamacallit fight scene because it was more brutal. Like very early on, she rips his wing off and like it's like
he stabs her in the stomach. Like, I'm like, damn, this is like brutal. And then like even before then, they were beating them up. They were beating each other up really, really brutally. It was like, wow, it was really well done. Like the action scene, that action scene was just really good.
Then she burnt.
It's not. I mean, I would say it matches the Iron Man Captain America one. I mean, different consequences, yes, but this was, I think, better.
Yeah, and the way that it ended with her burning him as well. And it's a callback to the first, and it's a callback to the first movie, right? Because we know those ships, the afterburner, like when Everett Ross was flying one of those ships, and remember she had him cross his arms or whatever to do certain things, like to get the ship to like give out off a pulse. So even though the ship was mostly broken, she was able to do that as well. Like it was a brutal scene. Like
you're not going to get that action scene without all those buildups. Like we're going back to the original thing of her dying. You're not going to get that.
It wouldn't have been as brutal. Like she would have been pulling her punches. I don't even think that she would have had the motivation to create the herb without the act. I mean, maybe she would have, like, because they still attacked the city, but like she definitely had motivation after her mother died to figure out the heart shape, because like at the beginning of the movie, at the beginning of the movie, she had sort of given up on it.
Your point is not lost, John. I'm not trying to not convince you, John. But it's like it's not lost on me. It's the whole revenge story. But even a revenge story can be good, and can be a good thing, even though you've seen it multiple times.
I don't think you can dismiss a thing because it's you've seen it before. Like John Wick is a revenge movie, but it's a brilliant revenge movie. So like revenge is a motivation. Isn't you don't?
That one was over dog. So that's.
It's just that I'm trying. Yeah, I don't want John to make you feel as though like Nathan and I are like gang up on you or anything like that. It's just I definitely understand that. I definitely understand what your sense about
of the superhero stories that are out there. Like, how many times are going to go to the revenge well? It's just a question, right?
I don't think. I think that's where you. I think that's where you go if you want to get like a brutal scene like that. I think sometimes they go to the well and it's not earned. Like I feel like if you want a comparison between this movie where I think it was well employed and a movie where it wasn't well employed, was X-Men Apocalypse, where Magneto has a family who just exists to be killed. Like you don't get any time with that family. They fridge his family. And
family killed by, right?
Yeah.
So they went to that well twice in their series of movies.
What you're talking about the Magneto? His mother was killed. Yes, but that was more effective. Like they actually that was more effective. It was his mother, but like you don't really see much at all with his family, and they try to use that to explain him not only becoming evil, but like. Connecting with Apocalypse, it wasn't well done. Because that movie in general was very poorly written. Unlike this movie. So
one more recent example, No Way Home. I mean, basically at the third act is pretty much a revenge. It's like all revenge.
You're right.
It's total revenge on Green Goblin. I mean, totally. It's just like his rage is there, but again, the brutality of that fight was really brutal. It was like, oh my gosh! And then like again, I mean, same beats, very similar beats, where Green Goblin basically stabbed Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. So it's like same thing.
Again,
I think
we saw that again. Yeah, I know.
See what
I'm
I'm
saying
saying?
it was.
I think seeing it.
That one also had an established character over multiple movies that ended up dying, driving the revenge plot. And I'm just like,
so did this. I mean, this has an established character in multiple movies who died.
Yeah, so here we are seeing it again.
No, but I understand I understand what you're saying.
All within the Marvel universe.
It's been seen before, but I don't think it's necessarily tired. Just because it's not the same character. Like, people die all the time, and people... Huh?
Maybe I'm just trying to...
I don't know. People die all the time. I think this,
you just mentioned a great one. People die all the time, and you're right. And maybe it's my tolerance level for this. And that's why I said, man, there's a high body count in this movie. It's just like, what the hell? You know, but anyways.
Yeah. So yes, I didn't have as much of a hang up on that, and I understand what you're saying. I think that it was effective for me because of the specificity of the character. Like, I think that the reason that it works here, reason that it works in No Way Home, is because they actually fleshed out the character that died. It wasn't an insignificant death. It wasn't just someone in the background. I mean, both of these are the people in the background and also Ramonda are characters that die, as opposed to Chadwick, who actually died in real life. The impact is different because they actually fleshed out Ramonda and they actually fleshed out May Parker. So you actually like the character, so you're with the protagonist in their rage. You follow.
So in the context of the movie, then, with her death. Mm-hmm. Why do we only get just a clip show of Chadwick Boseman when she's going to bury the funeral outfits, right? The funeral clothes.
I'm not sure what your question is. What are you talking about? Were you talking about at the very end?
You get a clip show of just Chadwick Boseman, and that's
at the very end.
At the very end, yeah. And so
no. You're missing. You're. I think it's something that you misunderstood. The burning, the ritual was a year after T'Challa's death. So if you remember, that ceremony was interrupted by Namor. Her mother was trying to convince her to move on because she wasn't processing T'Challa's death as well as everyone else. Like, everyone of course mourned him, but she was burning Chadwick's. She was burning T'Challa's funeral garb, so she was accepting T'Challa's death. Her mother's death she would do that again in another year after her mother's death. So that was her finally accepting T'Challa's death. That's why you get the montage with Chadwick. It's also why you start with her, the beginning of her grief, and you end with her accepting her grief at the end of the movie. That's why she's the last shot of the movie. That's why it's booked in. It's structured like that.
So you didn't feel like it still left out some sort of homage to Ramonda's death in any way?
Because this movie is working on multiple levels, right? Because like Chadwick actually did die. There's meta stuff happening. There's meta stuff happening here. You expect that she's going to do something very similar in a year with her mother without them actually putting it in the movie. This movie's working on multiple layers here.
So that's another reason I felt as though it was one death too many. It's like you're already dealing with a real world death and an in movie death of Chadwick Boseman and his character in the movie as well. Mm-hmm. And here you have another death that you're going to have that you would think would be addressed, but clearly they made the choice to address it off screen. But I didn't think. I think it's
definitely addressed. You don't see the implication. The implication is that there was a very similar funeral scene to the one at the beginning, but we only see the quiet part. The quiet part, or maybe it's not. It didn't, because the city was under like threat, and there was like a there was a looming military threat. Maybe they had a smaller funeral, but they definitely have a funeral. She's wearing this. She's like a year after her brother dies. She's in the same exact funeral attire. Unfortunately, Huh?
It turned into, to me, a funeral movie, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's a funeral movie because, like, the point of the movie is sort of the point of the movie, apart from the political stuff, is processing grief. Like, and I was talking to my wife about this. She hasn't seen the movie. I was talking to her about the fact that there's political stuff driving the action in this movie, and then there's the plot that was added to deal with Chadwick's death. The political stuff obviously existed before Chadwick's death, and then the themes of the movie were completely restructured to incorporate Chadwick's death. So the movie is about grieving. You say funeral movie, which, okay, is your interpretation. I say it's a movie about grieving very intentionally. It's a movie about grieving. And there are points in there that are intentional, are intentionally put in there to help the audience also grieve the character T'Challa, but also grieve the man Chadwick Boseman. I think it was very intentional the way the movie was structured. I don't know where are we now? I think
we're closer to the third act, pretty much.
No, I mean we talked about the fight, right? We talked about her creating the herb, and then we talked a little bit about the funeral. This is from the first funeral, but she's basically dressed this very similar way when M'Baku asked her for some advice. And she kind of throws back the line from the first movie. You want advice from a child who scoffs at tradition, and I mean he has a very good response. He's like, you've lost way too much to be thought of as a child anymore. I think they do a very good job of having a transition, like I said, from her being like fourth on the call sheet in the last movie for her being the lead of this movie. Like, they really put her through it, and I think you sort of have to kill her mother to kind of put her through it as well, to kind of develop the character, to make her a more serious character, to make her the Black Panther at the end of this movie. But yeah, he makes a good point. He makes a good point. She's not the quippy child anymore. She's obviously not a child anymore. She's lost way too much.
And on top of that, Letitia Wright was actually hurt. You know, that was in the news. I don't know how serious it was, but that also delayed production.
Yeah, that delayed production.
They ended up finished on time too.
Yeah. They pushed. Yeah. She was still, like, I didn't know, like, until you saw the movie, you didn't know why, like, how big she was going to be. But like, she's the main character in this movie, so I assume that she was in action scenes and stuff like that. So maybe she hurt herself. That was what was reported, was that she did get hurt in action scenes, probably when they were shooting in Boston with motorcycles and things like that. That's probably what happened, and that really delayed the process. So she was, personally, she was going through it as well. On top of the fact that she had to lead the movie pretty much. Which is just, it's just like, Herculean task, like you said, Nathan. Yeah, I mean, it's and she does a very good job. Like, Chadwick had been thinking about being Black Panther for years. Like, I don't know if about a vision board, but like he'd been thinking about what he wanted to do with the character or whatever. Chadwick was older than Ryan Coogler when he made that movie. Ryan Coogler was in his 20s, like his late 20s. Chadwick was 42. And he carried that movie. Compare that to Letitia Wright, who's in her 20s, and she had to carry this movie, and she does an exceptional job with far less preparation than Chadwick had. Like I said, before he even got the part, he had been thinking about the part, and she was thrust into this role, and she does an exceptional job. So, yeah. Of course. I mean, you got to assume that she had a lot of support from the cast and Ryan, but she delivered the performance that she needed to at every part of this movie, like communicating the emotions that she needed to in every point of this movie. So, yeah. So, but I think we talked about her creating the herb. There's a very triumphant scene of her jumping out of the ship, very similar to her brother, and a little bit of a arm wrestling fight with M'Baku as well, which was fun. Also, her yelling at M'Baku, very similar to the conversation that her brother had with him one-on-one, but like in this one he's like trying to advise her not to burn down the world, and she's like, my mother's dreams for me are dead because they don't exist anymore. I want him dead, and you're gonna help me. And he's like, all right.
Yeah, it's like, okay, sure,
yeah.
I guess. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So yeah, and how do you think? What do you think of? Like we already talked about the action scene between the two of them and how brutal that fight was. How do you think? What do you think about how she resolved like not killing him? How she like came back to her senses? Like what? How do you think? What do you think about how they did that?
I think it's more of kind of like honoring her brother in a lot of ways. Like what would her like basically in her mind is like what would he do?
What would he do? But also, it's unclear to me if she actually she had a vision of her mother, or she just thought about her mother. It's funny. It goes back to earlier on in the movie, and again, this is just really good writing when her mother says that she felt T'Challa's arm on her or whatever, and her very scientifically minded way, she's like, yeah, that was just a construct in your mind. That wasn't really real. And her mother and you know, her mother could come back, could have been angry with her, right? But she's like she's trying to help out her child. Like this is her child, one of her children are gone, and she could have been angry with her dismissing her beliefs. But she's like, right, okay, Shuri, what constructs do you create in your mind? Do they help you? Because obviously they don't. So I think this wasn't, unlike the Killmonger scene, I think this is a construct she created in her mind, and a construct that she created in her mind that actually was helpful to her in making the right decision.
Right. Right. So, and I think that that's definitely it. But also, like how Killmonger was saying that, you know, that T'Challa was noble, you know, and he was kind of above it all in some ways, but at the same time, he let his father die. You know, he didn't avenge his father's death by killing the man, Zemo, basically. Zemo. So so at the same time, I think that kind of crawled into her kind of like consciousness in some ways. Like, yeah, he did the right thing, where you know, if you remember that speech in Civil War was like, vengeance has consumed us both, and he like said, I refuse to like go down that path, you know.
Yeah, and she says something very similar here to Namor. Like he's driven by vengeance. She was driven by vengeance, and correct. And if she kept going, it would have just burned down the world. Like she, like not just what her like M'Baku's words are kind of ringing in her ear as well. It's like in the conversation that he has in his throne room about, you know, you kill him. They don't think of him as a king. They think of him as a god. It's just like it's gonna just be a bigger war. I think that's why they kind of played back the destruction going in reverse, like what they would lose. She had the experience or the fortune of actually seeing what he was working for, but also what he could lose, and what she could lose as well. Like if they continued to war with each other.
I was just thinking, actually, you know, if this is all set up for the Thunderbolts, like I know that Zemo's not going to be part of it, but that would be fairly interesting.
I think it is.
If they start to attack Wakanda,
it is set up for the Thunderbolts, or it is set up for and unlike some of the stuff that I think we said we're shoehorned, I think this is better set up. Like it's obviously set up for Wakanda 3 or Black Panther 3. Or it's set up for the Thunderbolts, because Namor has a very good scene afterwards, like with Namora. Namora's like, I hoped all my life to go into battle with you, because you got to imagine she's named after him, but like she's maybe 30, but he's hundreds of years old, so like she reveres him as like a god, like all her people. Why did you yield? And he makes a very good point. The world is going to come after them, and they're his the only ally that they have is his people now. Yeah, Telecom. So yeah, it puts him in a very good position, I think. So he makes a very good calculated choice. Like she's the most powerful person in the most powerful country, and she could have killed him, and she didn't. So it puts him in a good. It sets up really good stuff for later on.
He's playing the long game.
he's playing the long game. Which is interesting because like he was far more imperious earlier on in the movie, kind of just like going with his gut and threatening people. But I guess a sword to your throat makes you more contemplative and makes you.
Also, I didn't get this part where he was mentioning her. He referred to her as Imperious Rex. You might want to clear that up for me because I don't really know what that meant.
He didn't refer to her as Imperious Rex. So okay. Think of that scene as when Cap is like being beat down, and he says, "I can do this all day." He was about to pass out, and he says Imperious Rex, but he says Imperious Rex earlier on in the movie as well. Imperious Rex is Namor's battle cry before he says something. He says it earlier on in the movie before he kills Ramonda. It's his battle cry, and he sort of says it like he's putting his dukes up, but he's like he's half dehydrated. He needs and really he thought that he won this fight when he speared her. And he was trying to get back to the water. So he like mumbles Imperious Rex, and then she burns him. That's what happened there. So that was what was happening there.
Got it.
Yeah. So, yeah. We get King M'Baku by the end of this movie. We get her burning the shroud at the end of the movie, and then we get the mid-credit scene where we get the hope for the future, basically. Like, as I said, the whole movie was structured to help people process Chadwick's death and also give you hope for the future, where we get his son Toussaint, which again, they're just layering in all the political messages here. Toussaint was a hero of Haiti. He helped free that island. So they named the child Toussaint, but they also named child. They also named that child T'Challa, so that a lot of the plot points that we have in the comics still can happen with Prince T'Challa. It's just a different Prince T'Challa. So instead of Shuri being T'Challa's sister, Shuri will now be T'Challa's aunt. So, yeah.
That was so emotional because it's like you felt it was the ending scene was very cathartic, but then you have this surprise, and then it's like. He basically was like Bruce Wayneing everything behind her back. It's like it reminded me of Dark Knight Rises. I'm like, he did that. He did all that, behind the scenes, and did your mom know? It's like, yes, she did too. I'm like, what? Like how? I'm just like, wow. That's just like. I was just like, wow.
That's the one part. That's the one part of the movie. Even though I went in on the second viewing. Like more serious and trying to just see where where the issues were. That's the one part of the movie that made me cry the second time around as well. It's a very hopeful way to end the movie in a very kind of cathartic, Unfortunately, even like I think the way that Ryan was said this in an interview. Unfortunately, even our kings die. And we have to move on, and it was just a beautiful way to say, it's terrible that our kings die, but we can move on, and this is how we move on, and it's just hope for the future. So
yeah, so revolutionary. It's like the Toussaint name. I was like, oh, they did that. I was like, wow, and then and then they did the naming after his father. It's like, wow, that just hit the heart. I was like, whoa, that's just like, wow, just
which is why I said having the French as an antagonist early on in this movie was very intentional.
Yeah,
but yeah. Any other thoughts? I mean, we probably should do. I mean, we have like 2 hours here, so we've been talking. I know we haven't been talking for 2 hours, but we've been talking for almost 2 hours now. But like, any other thoughts before we wrap up? We maybe talk. Turn that off. We can talk maybe later on about the future, the things that this set up, the Okoye Disney Plus show, the Thunderbolts movie, Black Panther 3, and also the Ironheart show. So it sets up a lot of different things. We can have different videos talking about that stuff. Any other thoughts about
rankings?
This
movie? Also rankings.
Oh yeah. We'll do a video later on ranking everything in Phase 4 because this is the last Phase 4 movie.
Last Phase 4 movie, but also not the last of Phase 4 because of Guardians.
Yeah, this is the last Phase 4 movie, so we'll also rank some of the Phase 4 television shows as well, probably in a separate video. So, yeah, it was a. I think it's a good place to end because a lot of the movies this year have been mid range. I know, John, you put this kind of lower down, but I mean it's top of my list for this year because I think I articulated in lots of different ways why I like this edges out the Batman for me, even though it has flaws, and I enumerated all the flaws, but I think it's better. It's definitely better than it's just better thought out on multiple levels than the Multiverse of Madness movie or the Thor movie. It was written better. It was written with a purpose for me anyway. So
right. Yeah. I mean that definitely. I think that Phase 4 just as Phase 4 has been uneven. In some places here and there. I think that you're definitely going to see some adjustments. That are going to be made by them in terms of moving forward. But it's still entertaining. They're still on top of their game. Even though there's been some vulnerabilities here and there with certain characters and certain plot points, like you said, Nathan, some of the writing has not been as good, but overall it's still there. It's still that kind of old reliable that you can go see and enjoy yourself for the most part.
Out of 30 movies, they more than 90% of them being above average is an unbelievable achievement. And while I think there's been a lot of complaining about Phase 4, I really didn't have any issues with Phase 4 except until this year. I like the Eternals. Shang-Chi was an excellent movie. Black Widow wasn't exceptional, but it was still a good movie. I only had issues with Thor and in Multiverse of Madness, and of course No Way Home was also a really great movie as well. So it's the movies that came out this year, the Marvel movies that came out this year that were disappointing until this movie to me.
I just have one last question. Do you think that it's the movies got affected because of and we talked this with Priya as well. Is it because that there's overexposure, or is it because their attention has been turning to their Disney Plus shows? Is it because of that, or just a combination of factors? Pandemic also as well.
I think those questions are unanswerable until we get further away from the depths of the pandemic. I think that they're still going to have pandemic related precautions when they make things, but it's a completely different sort of thing. Shooting something a lot of this was shot last year, where vaccines were starting to roll out. The stuff the stuff that we saw last year, and also some of the stuff that we saw this year, were shot in 2001, but also shot in 2020 when they had a lot of restrictions. They had restrictions on so many things. So I think that had to play a role as well. They probably had to shuffle things around. So I think that had more to do with what was going on than maybe stretching themselves. But it could be that they were stretching themselves too much, and they can adjust in phase 5, make less shows or whatever. But like, I don't know. It's really hard to tell, because this extraordinary event that only happens every 100 years happened at the same time. So, yeah. So I don't know. Like, I guess we can definitely talk about that later on, because we definitely should wrap up or have a retrospective on Phase 4 television and movies, but also start to look forward to Phase 5, because the next movie coming up is Quantumania, and we already started to get some
Kang the Conqueror, Jonathan
and
Majors.
Yeah.
So the trailers leading up to this movie, I saw Jonathan Majors 3 times in 3 different movies in as part of those trailers. So that dude is everywhere.
Yes,
and deservedly so. He's been great. So
yeah, he's a great talent. Yeah. But yeah, I was he in the was it a Quantumania trailer at the beginning of this movie?
Yeah,
I came late. I came late to both of them.
He was. So it's the new Ant-Man trailer. So he appears at the end. Of
so
it.
he's in the Creed 3. He's in
Creed 3, Devotion. Yeah. Yep.
and of course, Creed 3 has Michael B. Jordan not only acting but also directing.
Yep.
And whereas the previous 2 movies were Ryan Coogler.
So all three of those movies previewed before this movie, like Devotion.
Yep.
Okay.
and Avatar. I had Avatar in there as well, and I was like, all these leading up to the movie. So
yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I definitely had Avatar in there because, like I said, I missed the previews in the IMAX version, but I did see I saw some of them in the 3D version, and I saw Avatar in 3D. So even in the trailer, I wasn't really excited about this movie, but I forgot how good the 3D version was from like 10 years ago. I would just want to see it in 3D, and I avoid seeing 3D movies, but like James Cameron does it well.
He had one of the 2 movies in history for me where the 3D was done well. Right?
Yeah.
The other was How to Train Your Dragon or something like that, and Avatar was one. I'll watch it. I want to see the sequel. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, we probably will review that one too. Another Disney property,
All right, guys. I think we should wrap up. We've been talking. Talking too long. So we want to hear from you guys. Have you seen the movie yet? It's like I said, it came out today. We'll continue talking about this probably because it's a big Marvel movie. We want to hear from you. Comment down below. To help us out, really helps out with the algorithm, and share and subscribe so you don't miss our next reviews. So, all right, bye guys.
Bye everyone.